Hello everyone, my name is Hiếu from KisStartup. Today we warmly welcome interested business and individuals to participate in our online training workshop, Funding Fundamentals. The workshop is an activity within the framework of Vietnam-Canada Impact Exchange Forum, specifically on the cross-border impact catalyst subsection. The forum is sponsored and supported by the Canadian Embassy in Vietnam, IC COVID project, UNDP, and SME Chaving project. And the activities are operated and organized by KisStartup and Spring Activator with the goals to promote impact exchange between two countries in three areas: export-import exchange, impact investment exchange, and general investing. To learn more about the activities of the forum, please visit KisStartup Facebook fan page and refer to the link in the chat box that we will send now. So in today's program, we are honored to invite Mr. Nguyen Chen, co-founder of Lingo Partners, as speaker. So before the event start, I would like to invite Mrs. Nguyễn Đặng Tuấn Minh, CEO of KisStartup, and Mrs. Trà My, Managing Director of Spring Activator in Southeast Asia, to say a few words. So please, Ms. Minh.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hiếu, for the warm welcome. In fact, I just want to say thank you for your participation, and especially our guest, Mr. Nguyen Chen. We really hope that you will bring the insights from Canadian impact investment market over here to Vietnam, where the concept's quite new. At the same time, we really want the participant to take advantage of this time to share your questions and your needs. Trà My, thank you very much for facilitating all this session. I will leave the stage for you.
Thank you so much, May, for having me here, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Hi everyone, my name is Trà My, and I started my career first working for an investment fund, and then later on I realized that my passion lied in entrepreneurship. So I really understand that a lot of you here have the same urge. I went on to co-founding two startups in the retail space, serving mainly arts and crafts brands and end users in two-sided marketplaces. So now I'm at Spring and I work on expanding our investment and entrepreneur training programs. I'm also an angel investor and have invested in numerous startups across different sectors, so including health, education, and most recently now recycled materials. And I was born in Hanoi. Later on, I moved to live in Silicon Valley in the US, and then Ho Chi Minh City, and then since 5 years ago, Vancouver. So now I work for Spring Activator based in Vancouver, Canada. And we are a global organization that exists to change the world through innovation. We work with entrepreneurs, investors, and ecosystem partners to help innovative companies to launch, grow, raise capital, and change the world. Another core piece of our work is training and connecting angel investors. Through our programs and angel network, we develop a rich database of investors across Canada. And so it allows us to connect companies to the right investors at the right time. We are now a team of 40 people, and we have offices in Vancouver and Toronto, Canada. Our team is spread all across Canada, the US, and Southeast Asia now with me here. We are delighted to partner with KisStartup to deliver these training sessions on impact readiness for impact investment readiness for Vietnamese impact tech startups. So now I'd love to welcome Nguyen, co-founder of Lean Growth Partners, who will be joining us today to talk about funding fundamentals. Nguyen, if you could introduce yourself, that would be amazing.
All right, well, thank you for the introduction. Hi everyone, my name is Nguyen. It's an honor to be here today. Like I was saying earlier, I didn't expect to have such a turnout today. I thought I'd be speaking to 5 startups and didn't realize there were so many of you. So I hope that my experience will be beneficial to some of you. So just briefly about myself and my company. I was born and raised in Hanoi as well. Left Vietnam when I was 15, went to school in Singapore and then Canada. I spent the last almost 2 decades in Canada, first in Montreal, and then later in Vancouver, building my career. So I started my first business in drones. So it's very sort of tech kind of startup. When I was 24, ran that for 8 years. While I was working for a fintech startup here in Vancouver as well. So, I've had a experience of peeking inside a startup, the fundraising, the strategy, the operation of a startup. And then in 2019, early 2019, I decided to start Green Growth Partners with a partner. And we are a investment and advisory firm based in Vancouver, Canada. Our primary investment is in private equity deals. We do look at startup deal from time to time if we know the founders really well and we understand the business or the industry really well. And keep in mind this idea about knowing the founders really well, because we're going to touch on that later on during my presentation. Started Green Growth Partners in 2019. I decided to move back to Vietnam last year, so I'm now based in Ho Chi Minh City, and we are looking at again private equity deals in Vietnam, primarily in healthcare, in education. We also look at a couple of environmentally friendly kind of business, so EV and that sort of things. So very honored to be here, and I think we can start the presentation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to stop us at any time or stop me at any time. I want this section to be interactive. All right.
Thank you so much, Nguyen. Sorry, give me 1 second while I start sharing my screen. Trying to do that right now.
We seem to meet Chami.
I'm back. It kicked me out when I was trying to share my screen. I'm not sure
really?
why. Yeah, let me try that again. I was like, oh, where is Zoom? And I just like quit.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was
should work
where is
now.
me? Where is the presentation?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay.
Mm.
I think it should work now. 1 second. Do you see my screen yet?
Not yet. Not yet. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, it works. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. I think we're about ready to start now. So just giving you an overview of what we're doing today. We'll give you a quick summary of the different funding cycles, and then Nguyen also will be touching on an investor's perspective. I'll be giving you a quick introduction on what a data room is and why you need to do it. And then hopefully throughout the session, you'll gain some familiarity with investment terms. So just giving some rules right now so that we can use our time together wisely. Since we have only 3 sessions together, please show up on time. We will most often start at the top of the hour. Today, we waited a bit to see if any more participants are coming, but normally we'll try to start on time. And each time you join our session, please name yourself, name your company and your pronouns. And you're welcome to engage in chat throughout the session for any questions that you have. So, and then after that, at the end of the session, or even during the session, we'll stop to answer your questions slowly. So do feel free to just engage in the chat, pop in your questions anytime. And please use the raise hand feature if you have a question or comment. If you don't want to do it in the chat, you can also raise your hand and then we'll go about calling you out to ask your question. We also have a dictionary rule. We all know that this is maybe quite new to some of you. So if you hear any word during the presentation that you are unfamiliar with, we'll be glad to explain it. So Ming, feel free to stop Nguyen and me anytime that you feel like someone says that, oh, there's this word that they wanted to get some more explanation on. And so first, we'd love to get to know each other a little bit. To everyone here, please introduce yourself. We would love to know about a bit more about your startup and what you do. So if you could type into the chat box to share, firstly, what is your product or service, and who are you serving? And secondly, what inspired you to start your startup? I think this is also one of the first things that I hope that you learn when you're trying to fundraise. It's networking. So when you pop out what you're doing, you tell other people, you might meet amazing partners, amazing other entrepreneurs who are in the same space as what you're doing, or who might just know some people that might be able to help you out in order to spread the word about your startup, or to find you a partner that might help you out, or an expert. So do try to network the most that you can. In normal offline sessions, you'll be able to talk to everyone. Here, you probably can't really like stand one-on-one and talk to other people, but you can still interact with each other through the chat button. So it's always great to do a quick introduction. And let me see if I can actually see the chat box. I can't when I'm sharing my screen. So I'll just hope that Min will help me moderate the chat box.
I will.
Thank you. So now we're ready to start. Nguyen, I'd love for you to jump in and maybe whiz us through this.
Okay, wait. I thought we were letting everyone kind of introduce now. We're gonna skip that for now.
I just wanted to see, Ming didn't seem like there's, are there anyone putting in the chat box? I just can't see the chat box, so I'm not sure what's happening.
Not yet. There's some, yeah, maybe people are typing, but yeah, over here we have one. Yeah, we have Stock Farm from Chavin province, and they are producing coconut nectar, processing in Chavin province, and they are now producing kind of coconut flour soil-free aminos, and they are dealing with climate change in Mekong Delta. Yeah, and they hope to export. Yeah. Okay. We're waiting for more to come.
Sure. Before we or while we're waiting for everyone to write in, I just also want to share a bit of a perspective of when I hear the word impact. I know a lot of people think it has to be like environmental. It has to do with like, energy or helping the environment. But from my experience, the impact can be a lot broader than that. And it has a few impact fund that I spoke to, they consider impact also societal. So if you are making something that improve lives of the middle class, that can be an impact. If you work with certain agency, like I mentioned earlier, to say uplift the life of the most underserved community in Vietnam, for example, that can be an impact. Or just the fact that you have the impact of your product or services reaches a much bigger mass instead of a very niche market, either the upper middle class or 10,000 people. As long as you have an impact that can be scaled up and reaching a lot more in terms of the audience, that can be classified as impact. So so when you look for fundraising, it doesn't necessarily have to be environmentally related funds. A lot of other sort of organization and investors are looking for other kind of impact that may benefit you. Okay, any more people who wants to write in and introduce? Okay, if not, then I think we'll just start the session, and then maybe as I present, people get more comfortable and may have questions, and we can be more interactive along the way. So before I begin, I just want to say that I recognize many of you here are familiar with the basics of fundraising and probably going through your first round of fundraising yourself. And so for the remainder of this session, I want to review these fundamental concepts to ensure that everybody is on the same page and working off the same pool of knowledge. But like I said earlier, I want this session to be interactive. So if you have questions, suggestions, or even insights you want to share with everybody else, feel free to do so. So the insights shared today are from the Spring team, as well as from my own experience being an investor and occasionally being an advisor to startup founders. So I've sat on both sides of the table being investor myself, but also fundraising myself. Okay. Okay. So the most important questions to ask yourself, regardless of where you are in your fundraising journey, is what are you exchanging for capital, right? Investors invest to make money, and sometimes more than just money. They have certain expectation of returns in exchange for giving you their money. And it is because of this expectation that the process of due diligence on both ends become very critical. The misconception that I often see is that founders think due diligence process is for the funds to evaluate their company, but it is not true. It is also an opportunity for you as founders to evaluate if a particular fund is a good match for you. And a properly done due diligence process ensure that you and your investors are a good match. You align on your values, your ethics, and your goals. So why is this important to you, or why is it relevant to you? It is because of a concept called dilution. So there are two types of capital, dilutive capital and non-dilutive capital. So the concept of dilution refers to the dilution of ownership, of control, right? So dilutive capital means you as founders have to pay for that capital with your equity or your ownership of the business, it diluting your control. And some of example for the type of dilutive capital is warrants or a straight equity subscription, a safe investment, or even equity crowdfunding. So in here, I think you are probably familiar with just a straight equity subscription. You're exchanging a piece of your equity for money. A concept called SAFE, which is a short form for Simple Agreement for Future Equity. It's a concept that was introduced in the US by Y Combinator. They are an incubator that is very famous for backing many successful business or startups that you've heard of, like DoorDash, Dropbox, Airbnb, Stripe, Twitch, you name it. And so a safe investment of simple agreement for future equity is essentially a promise to give the backer or the investor shares in your business at a price determined in the future. Okay, so this is similar to a convertible loan, but it's done very simple. So imagine I, as investor, will give money to me and say, I'll give you a $10,000 investment, but I don't know what percentage of the business I will own yet. In the safe investment, it will specify something like this. When you raise your pricing round, which is usually Series A, whichever investor agree on at the Series A pricing round as a price of the share, that's the price that I will buy your equity at. So eventually you will know how much you own, but at the time of making investment, you don't. Okay. The next concept is called the equity crowdfunding. So equity crowdfunding is similar to just a regular crowdfunding, but instead of selling your products or services for the money, you're selling your equity as well. And it's usually done through a platform. It's like a third-party platform for a large group of investors who invest a small amount of money. And because each of them only invests a small amount of money, like $50, $100, they retain a very small equity stake in your business. It is great when you want a small amount of money, you want to go out there and raise from sort of like a public capital pool, but you still want to retain the control. However, the one downside to equity crowdfunding is that your cap table will be very crowded, and it may be a concern when you raise your money later on, okay, from like a big VC, because now you have 100 small investors sitting in your company with everyone owning 0.01%, something like that. So some of the example for equity crowdfunding website like WeFunder, Fundable, Circle Up, Micro Ventures, you name it. Okay, so that's the dilutive capital. That's the thing that most people think about when you talk about fundraising. You're thinking of selling your equity for money. Now, the other type of capital, as you can guess it, is non-dilutive capital, which means as founders, you're not required to give up any equity or ownership in exchange for the capital. For example, revenue sharing is one type, loans, grants, tax credits, donations. In this case, the founders pay for this capital through other means, and most notably is interest payment, but sometimes in other forms, there are simply restrictions and insight or oversight imposed on the use of capital. So let me give you an example. If you borrow money from the bank or credit union, you have to pay interest on that loan until the loan is paid back. So the interest expense is your cost of capital, right? But in the case of, let's say, government grants, for example, in the US, during the onset of the pandemic in 2020, they introduced a program called the Paycheck Protection Program. And the stipulation is that the business who take out this grant can only spend it on payroll expenses, right? And it's a forgivable loan. That means, you might not have to pay that back as long as you follow the certain guideline that the grants stipulates. Or for another example, a generous donor may give you $1 million to the startup with the stipulation that your final product to be rolled out in the most underserved community first before it's being rolled out to the mass market, for example. So those are the example of the non-dilutive capital, because you get the money, but you're not paying it for it with your equity. So as a founders, looking at this, how do you approach fundraising? From my experience, the cheapest form of capital is your own customer, meaning revenue. If you have a product or service that you can sell to make money, that's the cheapest form of capital. You don't owe anything. As soon as you exchange your product and services for that money, the transaction is done. The most expensive form of of capital is equity. Once you raise money through selling your equity, there's a lot of string attached to it. So you have to think carefully of what kind of capital you want to raise. Okay, next. So now you understand the type of capital you want to raise. The next question you might want to ask yourself is, do you even want to have investors in the company, right? And I'm going to talk about the cons first before jumping into the pros. Having investors in the company means you're going to spend a bit more time, or a lot more time, depending on how many investors there are, to manage these new stakeholders. You now have outside influence into how you run your company, how you make decisions. And then ultimately, you also have to share the future benefits, right? You grow the company, now you have some investor, you have to share your dividends with them. And so those are some of the main cons. There's many other cons depending on the type of capital you raise. But that said, having investors in a company can be a wonderful catalyst to your business. Investors bring more than just money. They bring a large network of resources and expertise that you can tap into. They may also bring the experience in that specific industry that can greatly benefit your business. Okay. And with the added capital from these investors, you can reach your growth a lot faster. So I want to give you an example. This is a personal example. I invested in a direct-to-consumer, a D2C company here in Vancouver, Canada in 2020. The company manufactures dinnerwares and glasswares, among other things. They position themselves as an option for people who have outgrown IKEA products, right? So for furniture, for home decor, IKEA is like, the cheapest option, the mass-produced option. When you get to a certain point, you might want to, go up, right? You want to buy something a little bit more expensive, a little bit more new. So they position themselves as that option. And very early on, they have figured out that the most cost-effective channel for them is using influencers. They partner with some of the most famous and popular Instagram influencers in Canada and in the US. And during the onset of the pandemic, as with every other e-commerce brands, their sales exploded. People have to pay for an order and wait 3 months to get their orders. And this is because the business is very cash intensive. In addition, because of the COVID restrictions, the products weren't moving as quickly as they used to. That means the cash cycle is longer than normal. So they have to look into a various form of fundraising, like convertible loan, working capital financing, equity financing, just to raise the capital needed for them to manufacture these products. And they went from having roughly about $3 million in sales in 2020 to $13 million in sales in 2021, just because they know how to add fuel to their fire at the right time and use the right kind of capital. Okay. The next benefit of having investors is that you don't have to worry about your business going under. If you have a properly planned and well thought out, financial model, and you have a good runway for the next 18-24 months, you can actually focus on your energy and your time on operating your business, right? Having well-known investors, say like Y Combinator in the US or Techstar in Canada, adds a lot of brand awareness and exposure to your business, something that most startups will greatly benefit from in the beginning of their journey. It is no different than, say, graduating from a very well-known university or having worked at a large corporation. It simply adds the credibility to your startups, right? Okay. Anything so far? I've talked a lot, but I want to hear from people as well. So if you have something to say or to share, feel free to ping me or I guess Ming in the chat.
I have a question that your presentation, it talked about the capital market in US and in Canada, but how about in Vietnam? Because the capital market in Vietnam is not really perfect like in your country. So for example, in my rural area, I'm in Đắk Lắk province. When I wanna get the credit from the Agribank, they hold me a red book with my land, and also I have to pay for the staffer who work in the bank. I mean the banker to get the loan. Yeah, because it is the market, the capital market in here is not really perfect like in US and in Canada. It's my comment. It's not a question, but it's my comment.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. In Vietnam, the capital market is not as fluid. There is not a lot of liquidity, and it's not accessible to rural area yet, I would say. So like you have perfectly shared, your only source of capital might be loan from the bank, which means they want to hold some sort of collateral, most likely your red book. Sometimes they want to collateralize your herd of cattle as well as a way to ensure that their loans get paid back. I think from what I see, things have improved a lot in the last few years. There are a lot of even local, meaning Vietnamese fund, and regional Singapore funds, Indonesian funds that look into providing capital to more rural area. I know there's still quite few of them, and if you talk about impact, I think it's even fewer of them that is focusing on that niche market. But I think the picture or the market is improving already. In Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, obviously you get access to a lot of that. As you go further, outside of those big cities, your source of capital would be your bank or government agencies.
Ming, I also wanted to ask if in your work you've looked at any kind of organizations that help with microfinancing for farmers. Maybe anyone at KisStartup might know about this.
Yeah, I think I can provide certain information to Peter later on. But for your information, in fact, we have different micro financing funds here and there in different provinces. But it depends totally on the geographical strategy of different funds. So let's say that we will find information with your areas and then let you know them.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna move on with the presentation. Okay. So funding cycles. How long does it take to close a deal? Nobody knows. I can tell you that everybody say, "Oh, we'll do the deal in 2 weeks, 2 months." Yeah, that's, I'd say majority probably fall into that time frame, but nobody knows. And it's based on a various factors, right? Unfortunately, even fundraising, relationship plays a very crucial role in the fundraising process. It's not as simple as I submit a application, my company fit the criteria, I get the funding. Sometimes a really good business, but the founders don't have the relationship built already, can take a long time or be unsuccessful at fundraising. So, fundraising, whatever you had in your head, think 2 or 3 times longer just to be prepared, right? And having a properly built out high quality data room, which me will touch on later, can speed up the process significantly, especially when you are talking to funds or investors that you don't already know personally, and they need to really drill down to in the due diligence process. Okay, next one. So again, we put up the time in weeks here. Like I said, probably not true. In reality, it really depends on who you know, who you talk to, what kind of relationship you have had with these investors. But in terms of the length of each of this type of fundraising, it is relatively correct. If you're fundraising from friends and family or your own capital, it is the quickest form. Right? They already know you their whole life, they trust you, and they probably want to support the dream. So that would be the fastest way of getting capital. The next one would be revenue. In many ways, in my opinion, revenue is the best form of capital for 2 reasons. First of all, it validates your idea. It shows that whatever you are providing meets the capital, or sorry, the market's requirement, right? The market is willing to pay you money for what it is that you're selling. And the second reason is that it doesn't require you to give up your equity, right? So you retain 100% of your business. You know that your business is validated. It's the best form of capital. And then grants and loans, it takes time. It really depends on what agency you're going through, what sort of program requirement there are for you to write this grant proposal or submit a loan application to the bank. Crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, the campaign, it is I'd say it's not easy to actually get money through this platform because there are just so many opportunities on it. Imagine if you think of raising fund through Kickstarter, for example. There are 1,000 other projects on Kickstarter, right? So for people to look at it and choose yours it is challenging. And then the most traditional, most structured way is fundraising through VC fund, through angels. And so with this type of capital fundraising, it takes a lot of time because each of these organizations have their own internal process. And so it moves slow. And because they are also investing other people's money, they need to go through several rounds of approval before they can disperse the money. So usually it takes a long time for you to get VC or PE or angel money. So to say all of that, why is it important to you? As you know by now, being in a startup means you are always broke. You're broke, right? And your job as a CEO is not only to steer the ship, but to make sure that the ship doesn't sink. So knowing how much your burn rate is, how long your runway is, and how long it takes you to fundraise forces you to be flexible with your operations. Perhaps you need to lay off staff during hard times or cut non-essential expenses or scale back on the expensive Facebook ads, whatever it is that you need to do. You need to increase your runway by then a month or 2, right, during hard times. Okay, so from what I heard, some of you are already going through your fundraising, either or close already the first round. So maybe I want to hear from those who have done that. What is your experience? Share with the group. How do you find the process and all?
From my side,
Mhm.
with my organization, we have the grant from UNDP, very small money, around $5,000 include tax. So because they are the big organizations, United Nations, so I think it and also it's small money, so the process is just only presentation and just talk the impact with the farmer. My organization want to find the bigger fund to make a lot to make a higher impact to the farmer. So how long for the process with the due diligence with the other impact investor. I mean with the bigger money, for example, $20,000, $50,000 is how long, and how about the process? You get my idea?
Yeah, I can't tell you how long it takes. It really depends on the organization. I can tell you that the process most of them go through is the exact same process that we're presenting here today. So you have your pitch deck, right? You talk about your business, who you are, what you're trying to solve, what is your value proposition, like what value are you adding to society or the community. And then if they like that, then you probably will sign a non-disclosure agreement, like an NDA, so that you can start sharing information. And once you have that signed, then they will ask for a data room, meaning all of the information on your company, your financials, your legal documents, to ensure that you are, first of all, a proper business. Second of all, to ensure that you're not doing anything illegal, and then to evaluate for themselves is whatever you're doing a fit for their mandate, right? And does it satisfy the requirement for fundraising, for returns for their partners? So all of that process takes a long time. I can't really tell you how long it is, but that typically is the process. And once they are satisfied with the information provided in the data room, maybe have a meeting with you and then discuss the terms, and then they would issue a term sheet. So term sheet is usually non-binding. It basically just to say, here, I am interested in your business. I want to give you X amount of money. Okay. I want to give you an X amount of money, but I want X, Y, and Z. So for grants and loans, usually the financial return is a lesser, less important kind of requirement. Maybe they want to ensure that you can reach 10,000 farmers, 20,000 farmers, that sort of thing. And so the term sheet will list out all of that expectation. And if you agree to it, then they will finalize and give you the final offer, I guess.
I see that's there's a Zoom user. Maybe KisStartup, could you help me mute user? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne, for sharing that. The only thing I would like to add is, so we do have this slide that I have on the screen right now, and it shows you kind of the average time that it takes to close depending on what kind of capital you want to fundraise from. So for example, if you are thinking about fundraising from investors, from angels, VC, it normally takes from 16 weeks to 52 weeks. And it really depends on whether you've already started the conversation, the kind of organization or investor that you're talking to. One thing to note, and I do see that your question relates a bit to the other question that I see from Lena here, which is, what is the things that impact investor expect from social enterprise? So what kind of data or report that we should prepare when approaching them? I think it relates because I think we have to see the difference between an impact investor, and by this I mean an investor who wants to invest in your company firstly for the financial gain. They have to see that they will be able to earn money from this. And the second thing, they care about impact. So an investor is still an investor, even if they have an impact lens, They are not there to give out their money without caring about the returns. And then the second one that we're talking about that you already tried applying to, so for example, the UNDP grant, is normally people who are giving out grants, giving out, I would say, gifts, or that just expect you to create an impact, but they don't really care about the return of their money other than your impact. So look into your own business model and see what kind of capital or organization would be a best fit for your kind of business model. For example, if it's not a scalable business, if it's not going to scale like 1 million of users, 2 million of users, or if it's not going to have a chance to make a lot of money down the line, then maybe you're not supposed to talk to impact investors because they are not the ones who would be the best fit for you. But maybe you should go in and find grant providers or anyone who cares more about the impact than about the financial return. So for grant providers, they care mostly, Lina, I know you asked the question, they care mainly about what kind of impact you can show. And in order to show impact, you could show, for example, as Peter mentioned, the income of farmers that were increased after they worked with Peter. So for example, their income was this much, now their income has increased to this much. So you measure that kind of income change and multiply it by the number of farmers that you think you are able to touch on. So that's a way of showing impact. Another way of showing impact, if you are in the business of trying to doing a substitute from another product that has been creating a negative impact on the world, whether societally or environmentally. So for example, carbon footprint. For example, the way that most companies in the world are creating, let's say, a certain kind of oil, is creating this much carbon dioxide into the world, or this much, I guess, any kind of carbon gases, greenhouse gases, or any other kind of negative impacts in terms of environmental products, then the way that you are using to produce your own product might be saving this much in terms of negative impacts. So you are making a difference in that you are decreasing the negative impact that customers or producers or brands are having on the world. So it's either that you're creating a positive impact by doing something new, by adding more income, by saving more lives, by helping more people becoming successful, like middle income people being more successful, or you are doing it by substituting and eliminating some of the negative impacts that other brands, other customers, other companies are creating on the world. So that would be how you are showing your impact. Then that would be for grant providers. And again, for investors, any kind, including impact, you have to show that you are able to make money either now or down the line. Either you have to reach some point of break-even point where after that you reach a critical mass and you are able to make a good return for them.
I think just adding a very small note to that is you need to determine for yourself whatever that you're building. Are you building it for the financial gain? So, or are you building it primarily for the impact, right? Because based on what you are building, then you need to look for the suitable investor who care about the same thing you do. Like I said earlier in my presentation, due diligence or investment in general is a two-way street. You don't want an investor who don't align with you to invest in your business because they're going to try to influence your decision to go with their thinking. And that's going to create a very difficult working relationship. You want investors that care about the same thing, align with you in terms of your goals, your values, and your strategy. Okay. Shall we go on?
Ming, do let us know if you see any other questions around that we should answer.
I think we have one question here, but maybe we can leave it until later. Yeah, when you can go on.
Okay. So say you made your pitch. People say that I'm interested, I want to know more. So then you start the due diligence process, right? You sign an NDA, you're willing to start sharing data. So essentially, what is due diligence? You can see the official definition here on the screen. But in short, due diligence is doing homework. And it is a two-way street, as I mentioned earlier, for you to evaluate a fund and for the fund to evaluate you and your business. A typical due diligence process will touch on information like commercial potential, the market size, the operation, and legal and financial information, and sometimes your cap table. Actually, no, most definitely your cap table. If you're a tech company with a proprietary technology, they will also want to do a technical due diligence to see if whatever technology you're building has any defensibility, right? Or is it an actual new technology? So the speed of the due diligence process, as I mentioned earlier, based on various factors, the quality of the information you provide is a critical one, but also the size of the investor, the internal process that the investor has to go through, and it can go as short as 2 weeks or as long as 2 months or even longer. So the one thing you can control is having a well-organized data room populated with high quality information, because that will help speed up the process drastically. Okay. Next. So what is the due diligence for, essentially? The technical part of the due diligence is to make sure that your business is legitimate, that you are serving a legitimate market needs, and you have a business model that makes sense, that can make money. But most importantly is to answer the question, can I trust you with my money? And when I say you, it means the founding team, or you if you are the single founder, right? Are you a capable person? Are you smart? Are you coachable? Are you adaptable? Are you flexible? Are you resilient enough to, change your mind when things get tough, right? And I can't stress enough the importance of coachability, adaptability, and flexibility, because I've done this. I have a couple of examples I'm going to share with you right now that really solidify the point that investors invest in people. I'm sure you've heard of this before, but it is especially true. I have both good example. Sorry, I have example where I make good investment and bad investment because of the people factor. Okay. So the first example, I made an investment into an international school here in Vietnam. The growth, me knows about this one. The growth potential is great. The business has a lot of room for investor to add value to and realize the untapped potential. But unfortunately, the founder or the owner is not coachable. We have a really hard time establishing a working relationship, and it turned out to be a bad investment, because you as investor, right, you're not only putting in the money and then let them do whatever with it. You also want to have influence into the business. You also want to add value, right, through your expertise, through your network, and to ensure that everyone has a mutual benefit out of this investment. But when you get a founder who is so stuck in their own way and not coachable, not listening, or even flexible enough to hear a different opinion, it is already off to a bad start. So that was my own experience investing in a founder that is not coachable. And then I also made another investment in an EV startup here in Vietnam. And then in the initial time of that business, the founding team wanted to build EV scooters that is equivalent to a Vespa or like a Honda SH. So they're targeting the B2C market. But after speaking to one of the angel investors, the founding team was convinced to change the strategy to serve the B2B market first, specifically selling EV scooters to logistics company. And now that strategy is attracting attention from global investors, from government agencies, the US, and it proved to be a much more viable model than a B2C model. And so that's to show that a founders who's willing to listen and willing to change their mind and change their strategy can be beneficial, right? And so as investor on the other side, when I interact with you through the due diligence process, or even before that, in the back of my mind, what I'm trying to figure out is that person coachable? Is that person flexible? Or is he so stuck, or is she so stuck in her own way that no matter what you propose, they're not going to listen? Because that's the biggest turnoff. That's probably the single most important reason why some investor might not invest in your business. And it's not because the business idea is bad, but it's because you can't be coached to run a business. Okay. So some of the very specific questions that they, might go through in their head as they do the due diligence process. Do I like you and your team, right? Is your team capable? So you need to have the technical skills to do this as well. Is your product and solution or service exciting to me? Imagine a VC fund. They have, hundreds of decks crossing through their desk every week, right? So they don't spend a lot of time evaluating every deck. So somehow you need to be able to capture their attention. If your product and solution is novel, but it's also viable, then you're already capturing their initial attention, and that will lead to the next steps. Do you, know your market and your competition? If somebody comes to me and say, I am the only one, I have no competitors, it's most likely that you don't actually know what you're talking about, because there's just so many people, so many ideas out there. The ideas are cheap, right? It's the execution that matters. And most of the time, if you are the only one, chances are you're not the only one. You just haven't done enough research on your own homework to know what you're getting into. The other important things that people look for is this market big enough? If an investor expecting a 5x, 10x returns, they want to be able to say, okay, this market is $1 billion industry, instead of this market is $100,000 industry, because then they have 50,000 investment in your company does not yield any return to them. And then finally is about exit. And this is important because who you talking to fundraise, each of them have a different expectation in terms of exit. Okay, so as a founder, you need to know what type of investor you're talking to and what is it that they're expecting specifically from this deal. So as me was sharing earlier with Peter, right? If you go to a VC, even if they're impact investors, they still want money. They want financial returns. And they do have a specific timeline in mind, no matter how long that is. Typically, a VC fund will wrap up within 10 years. So that means a deal timeline looks like a 5 years, 6 years to them before they can wrap it up. But if you're looking for, if you're talking to a family office or a private equity fund, they may have a much longer time horizon in their mind. So they may want to hold this for cash flow, so 20 years or forever. They don't have a specific exit timeline in mind, for example. So knowing all of that, knowing exactly who you're talking to helps. Okay, I think back to you.
Thank you so much, Nguyen, for that. So I know that we don't have a lot of time left. Ming, do you think that we can spend 5 more minutes on the presentation, and then after that we can go to the Q&A? All right, thank you. So you can find here a simple due diligence process. So the pre-diligence is about fit, the quality, the problem being solved, making that first impression with the investors. It's about getting all of your stuff set up in advance and focusing on that relationship building. Going to networking events is important, pitch competitions, connecting to your network and following up to meet and get introduced to investors. Then you enter into the phase 1, which is when investors are going to look into your team, into your technology, your distribution channels, and your revenue model. So how you are going to get money. The second phase involves a SWOT analysis. So that stands for strengths. So what are your assets? What is going to make you successful? This is very important. And I feel like a lot of the founders don't focus enough on this. The idea is wonderful, but I don't see any, if you are an investor for a long time, there are no novel ideas. It's all about what makes you successful in establishing that idea that many other teams are going to have. W would stand for weaknesses. So what are the things that are not as great as they could be? Maybe you're missing a key person or a role in your team. Maybe your technology might not be patentable. So what are the aspects in your company that could be a risk? And never say that you have zero weakness. Investors want people who clearly understand their weakness, and that is the only way that investors believe that you can actually improve and scale. The opportunities would mostly be external, so they are future potentials. For example, if the government is passing a law to ban single-use plastics. So this would be kind of an opportunity for startups doing renewable containers for takeaway food. A threat, on the other hand, even though it's also an external risk. It's, for example, what if the government pulls away a certain law or regulation? What if a bigger company would decide to get into your market? Investors want to see that you are aware of these threats and you have plans for when these happen. The total attainable market is also important because it gives investors an idea of how big your company can be. And what are the risks? So the phase 2 is all about being very honest and being vulnerable. The more you are being able to share about where the risks are and show that you have plans for when this happens and show that you're coachable when investors give you advice on how to handle that, the more trust you are able to build in your integrity and also in your potential. So by phase 3, investors are doing their final check, and I normally call this a fact check. They will now dig into your legal paperwork, any financial analysis, your cap table, your term sheets, double checking your contracts, questioning any numbers that you've shown previously, and maybe doing even some negotiations on terms and valuations. I wanted to see if there are any questions on this slide. All right. So now I'd love to, I was thinking about doing this question before to give you some chance to share with each other and receive feedback, but I think we'll leave this until the end. If there are no questions, then we can do this. Because if we do this right now, I'm afraid we won't have much time left for the questions. So I'll move ahead. And then later on, if there are no questions, we can move back into this slide. We can cover some data room basics right now because I think this is very important. So what is a data room? Ultimately, this is the entire point of this is to be able to quickly and easily convey important information about your business to your investors. So it should contain any information that investors want to know about your business that you can share. The point of this data room is to build trust with investors, increase their confidence in your ability to deliver, and to save yourself time. You don't want to be resending documents to different investors asking the same questions, retyping emails, looking back into emails to find your previous answers, copy pasting and all that. You should just have just one room with everything, and then you can just share that link to that room with any of your potential investors. One thing to note about building a data room is that you shouldn't leave it until the last minute. Start building it as soon as you plan to raise funds and continue to expand it with any questions, any answers, any documents that you find that investors ask for. Here are the categories that should be included into a data room. So firstly, you find here your corporate information, which is anything that pertains to your business, how it's incorporated, how it's set up. So this would include your pitch deck, your business plan, if applicable, your investment terms, the use of proceeds. And then it should also have information on your customer. So customer personas, any testimonials, any customer trends that you find so far. Letters of intent is great to show if you don't have customers yet, paying customers yet. Sales agreements, your timeline, your pipeline, your marketing and sales strategy should also be in here. And then you should also have your financials in the data room. So any historical financials, cash flows, and also investors always want to see your 3 to 5 year projection and any key metrics, because that shows where you can, what is your potential? How are you going to grow? How are you calculating that growth? They will often question each of the numbers that you give, so don't give crazy projections that you have no facts or proofs or no plan to show how you're going to make it happen. And then you should also show your market information. So what is your market size? What piece of the pie do you have? What research have you done about the market that you're in? And this is also a good place to put in your competitor analysis. Products and operations would be any kind of information or service into your product or service. So how does it work? What are the operation details that your investors might want to know to make your operations or your business or service viable, to make it make sense? Your legal should include your cap table, your founders agreements. Do you have previous investors? Have you already given up shares in earlier rounds of raising? Your intellectual property, if you have any lease agreements, any other major NDAs or contracts. And then of course, you should talk about your team. So who runs your business and what are their profiles? Do you have any subject matter expertise, and what makes your team a strong team? It's also a good idea to include an organizational chart in here and any employee or contractor agreements if you have. The best way to share You can either use shareable folders. They are easy and cheap to use, such as Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive. They are great ways to share. If you wanted extra security, you can also use Orange Docs or Carta. That are two platforms that you can use. It allows you also to track your investors, how they are moving within the data room. So that might be interesting if you really want to know what they're curious about, where they're getting stuck, where they're spending a lot of time on. And the due diligence process is a conversation. So the format that you use to share your documents can help to create trust. And it's also a start of a dialogue between you and the investor. So share the folder early. You can build confidence by sharing early, and you keep the momentum of interest growing. And also it shows that you're organized. Make sure that your data room is also easy to navigate. The worst thing I think is to wait for your data room to be or 100% done, because it will never be 100% done. People will have questions, and it's kind of a work in progress. You keep updating as it goes. You can use the running Google Doc to track any Q&A rather than sending emails back and forth. And you can just, every time that you see that there is a new question that is not yet being able to answer it with your previous documents, then add it into the Q&A and add an answer in there so that that document is always a live document for investors to see. You can ask the investors to sign an NDA, as Nguyen mentioned, before sharing your data room, but do know that sometimes investors sign them. And then it's kind of like your own judgment whether you trust this person enough to share your data room, but it happens. Sometimes investor will refuse to sign them. It's also quite common. And most of the time I would advise that unless you can actually hide any kind of supply chain related confidential informations or customer related, but otherwise I think most of your operational non-confidential information can still be shared. So consider that. And also, I would suggest that you build a habit of having either monthly or quarterly update emails that you send to prospective investors or even your current investors or any of your company allies. And that you should be sharing what you accomplished this month or this quarter, one thing that you learned, and just one thing that you are looking forward to. You can also use the emails to ask for help. So if you have one question or if you have one ask for help, do that in that email. It's simple, but it keeps you on the top of mind of investors, and it continues to build that trust and momentum over time. There are some common mistakes to avoid, but I know that in the interest of time, I'll just leave this here for you to consider. And meanwhile, we can go about answering any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nguyen and Me, for very useful information, especially the different ways to raise funds from Nguyen and the data room from me. Currently, we are having questions from SD Nano, who is now raising funds for their lubricants. The question is, where should they, find the right investors from Canadian market for their product, which seems to be very niche?
So you said that they are asking where they should find investors?
Yeah. Who should they turn to for raising the funds?
And then, sorry, the product is
nanographene technology to lubricants.
I would suggest that they look, so firstly, you can actually do a quick Google check to see if any of the funds are investing in, this would be probably in materials-based startups. And also if they can find any interesting startups in that same market, I would suggest they go into that startup website and then look into who their investors are. And they start the search from there. They can actually reach out to those startup founders in that same market that they find interesting and just have a call with them. Just ask them, tell them that what your product is, tell them that you're looking to raise fund, and you would just love to have a conversation and ask for their kind of advice, story sharing and experience sharing, and have a call with people. And then from there on, I believe that a lot of different connections are going to be made. So just go to find any other startups in that same space that you're operating in, looking to see who their investors are, and then start your search from there. Otherwise, you also have the typical Google, finding to see who are the big VC funds investing or angel investors investing in material space, but I would recommend the first way of doing it because then you also create connections, and an introduction is always better than cold reaching out to these funds.
From my perspective, first I want to know if this technology is patented, is it defensible, or is it already on the market, right? If it is something that you can defend, then only you can produce it. Why not reach out to other oil or petroleum company, right? So they can invest in this. I know, for example, I invested in that EV company. It's electric vehicle, but we have investment, or we are talking to investor from BP Oil, right? It's an energy company. They interested. They have BP Ventures, which is the arm of BP Oil that invests in renewable energy. So things like that. So if your product is relevant, you can always talk to the current existing player. You don't need to go to VC for that, right? Because those guys, they also want to reinvent themselves, and they have a lot of money to do just that. So that would be my approach, in addition to what me suggested.
I actually love that Nguyen pointed that out because I believe that that kind of investor would be very helpful for you when you're trying to build your distribution channels. So strategic investors are wonderful. They already are selling to probably or have connections to the kind of partners or buyers that you're looking for your product. So it's great to get them on the table if you can.
One thing to keep in mind if you do go to those guys is that sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes they invest or they buy into a business and they squash it because it's a direct competitor to whatever they're offering. So, for them, it's a very cheap way of, squashing competitors. So you need to be extra careful as well to see if your product is a competing offer or is it a complementary offer, and how both sides can benefit from it. Usually strategic investors also want a bigger chunk of the business. That means you're losing a lot of control and influence over how you run it. So consider, do you really need the equity piece, or can you reach out to, again, grants, loans, other form of non-dilutive capital that allows you to reach your target, or get to the size where you have a lot more leveraging power, and then you can go back to those strategic partners and say, hey, I want to retain 60%. I don't want to be losing control over whatever that is.
Great point.
Sorry.
I hope. Oh, go on.
I'm Long from the FD Nano. I just because Mr. Nguyen said that the big company like the BP, they will thinking about what's out the opponent. We also thinking that maybe our product will be the big competitor to their region product on the market. So I don't think if in that case how we can react and still can get the interested from the big guy like or how we can defend ourselves from that. Because with our technology, yes, with our technology, it will reduce the consumption of the oil lubricant for especially for the big company that they will be the main get the effect.
I would look at it as not everything has to be competitive, right? Yes, maybe your product will reduce the use of lubricant, but that also means they can charge a lot more for it and then sell it as this is a product that helps the environment, but unfortunately it costs a premium. So, there's a lot of way to approach it. I think it's just a matter of you need to figure out what is their thinking, right? Are they going for control and then try to squash you, or are they actually thinking of you as a way to add to another product line in their portfolio? I mean, like I said, right, they were selling oil and they're willing to invest in renewable energy. Like that's a total opposite. So I'm sure they have corporate mandates that forces them to do all this kind of investment to explore outside of their core businesses. So I wouldn't write them off right away, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I got what you mean.
Yeah. Okay, I see a question from Vina Strauss.
In fact, Vinastro is producing kind of environment-friendly straws from rice, and they're expecting to expand the market more than more than calling for investment. I think. Vinastro, are you
This
there?
is introduction.
Vinastro,
Yes,
okay.
I'm here. Good morning, everyone. I'm Thư from Vinastro. Yeah, in fact, you are right. We are looking from Asian and to extend our market for our eco-friendly straw and other eco-friendly products. So we we want to find not really want to find an investor, but we want to find or agent or a partner who can help us to develop our exporting market, because we want to focus in exporting.
Yeah, Nguyen and me, yeah, thank you too. Maybe this kind of raise a question for me. Is there any way of investment and from kind of potential buyers and stuff? It's kind of non-equity, but it's kind of I mean, partnering, and then because they want to expand, but of course they don't have any fund for market expansion, for example. And is there any way of kind of investment for market expansion or something like that? Have you seen it before?
Yeah, I can't really comment on this business specifically. So I about 3 years ago, and Vinastro, you probably know this because they're in the same space as you are. So we advise Eco. They also produce straw in Vietnam, and they're pretty much everywhere PR wise. So we advise them on fundraising. But their business model is more on the B2C side of it, while we advise them to go B2B. And I see that Vinastro is already doing that, which is what I think is the way to go. In terms of exporting, the one venue that I think would have the most potential is untested, but the most potential is going through distributor. So there are certain distributor or agent, as you call that, right? They work with large grocery chains, large restaurant chains, and hotel chains overseas, and you just share revenue with them. So they would help you, right, go and reach the market. I know the EU have a couple of agents that work with Carrefour, which is one of the largest grocery chain. Was it in from France? I don't know. but those are probably the only way to go. If you do get investment from Canada or the US, then they may have other connection that can help you, but I don't see it right now, because also the straw market is very saturated. We're not competing with just local Vietnamese producer, but also Chinese and Taiwanese. And so I'm not sure if it's investable. From an investor point of view, this is more like a private equity deal. So it's not a deal where you need the money to scale. You're already profitable from day one because you're selling product. If you price it properly, you already make money. So this is harder for that kind of impact fund to look into, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. Could you please recommend some name or some information for me for collect the information about the distributor for hotel chains or resorts or something like this, because we also focus in you are right, we are focused in B2B market, and yes, we're looking for who is a wholesaler who import the because besides the straws from our own factory, we also distribute some eco-friendly product from we collect from Vietnam, like the bamboo, coconut bowl, something like this. So
Unfortunately, I don't have the names. I was just an advisor to the company, so I wasn't privy to the private operational information. Unfortunately, I can't help you there.
There
Maybe
are,
Me has some
there's a
contact.
list of distributors that we're going to send to KisStartup. And Ming, if you could share it with Venus Straws too, it would be for the session yesterday on exporting.
Yeah,
And we're compiling a list of potential distributors that you could reach out and ask.
sure, for sure.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can
Just a
join our
curious,
group. Yeah, go on.
just a question, very curious. Are you guys working with coffee ground to make any products? Hi.
You mean the coffee shop or what?
Yeah, the coffee, like after you grind the coffee and you use it, right? Like, do you use that kind of material for, like, let's say, making plates or containers?
At the moment, not yet, because at the moment we focus in our own product first, and maybe in the next step we will make more other product, eco-friendly products, cup, plate, something like this. But at the moment, only start.
Right, but what I mean is as a material, right now you're using rice flour and tapioca,
Yes,
right?
yes.
My experience with those is that after you soak it in water for too long, it starts to expand and it breaks.
Yeah.
So I've seen some other alternative where they use coconut water, or like what is left of the coconut flesh, and also coffee grind that seems to hold the shape a lot better when in water. So I'm just curious if you ever considered using different material than the flour.
Understand. About the Indian our stores, I have to discuss with our production manager, because we now the assembly is using for make from rice, and we use the local material. We take the rice from nearby our factory to saving the cost. So for the coffee bean coffee, something like this, maybe we have to carry out from other location, so the transportation cost will be add into the product price. It needs to higher price. At the moment, the price of our store is a little bit higher than regular store, than plastic, something like this. So if we add more other Indian, maybe from other location, it will lead to increasing price. So we have to considering about this.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, thank you. But maybe I'm thinking maybe a good idea. Our store now is you for in the cold water, something like this, 2 to 3 hours. But maybe add another Indian will have it lasting longer. So thanks for the idea. I will talk with my production manager, and maybe in the future we can.
No worries.
Yeah.
This is so random, but one of the business that I know that Ming supports through the through the import-export program has coconut produce. So if you do need to work on anyone for coconut products, you know to ask the KisStartup team.
Exactly. Dina, are you having any question? You see a raise one.
I have a
Yeah.
question. May you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Lena. I'm from Sofram. So I have a question that like, could you recommend us some brands that are like impact investor, that they not require the non-repayable resources of funding? The funding maybe can in Canada or with any countries in the North American. Yeah. So this is my question.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
I think
didn't really catch your question. Yeah.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you repeat?
Okay. So we are some kind of social enterprise, and we want to looking for the range that are non-repayable sources. And yeah. So could you recommend us some some name of the range or the organization that we can looking for?
so. You meant like organizations that give out grants, right?
Yeah.
Hmm. I'll have to do a search on this because I do know some grant providers in Canada, but I highly doubt that the ones I know would provide it to non-Canadian companies. So I'll ask around, and if I can find any, I'll send it through me to let you know.
Okay. Thank
When do
you.
you know of any?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone specifically, but what I do know, and this might be relevant, is not long ago, British Columbia and Ontario, they have their sort of like agriculture ministry hosted in Saigon. So the Chamber of Commerce for Canada, they are actively pushing for collaboration between Vietnam and Canada, and agriculture is one of the main sort of topic for Canada, especially after the war and after China has sort of become a less of an export of products. Canada and other Western countries have looked at Vietnam increasingly as a way to secure food source. So I think there might be something there where you can help boost between Vietnam and Canada sort of trade relation. But I don't know the specifics. So what I would ask or encourage you to do is just reach out to them. There is a Chamber of Commerce Canada. They're based in Saigon, and they would have staff that you can speak Vietnamese can help you with that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Nguyen and me for this session. I think we have come to the end of the workshop, and I think the participants we're also having some information from Fuwa 3E. I think I will pass over to you via emails in case you have any suggestions for them. Yeah, I think we time passed. Really, we have to come to the final minutes of the workshop, and thank you very much, Nguyen, for your sharing. Very useful and also very practical for the startups who are now dealing with their investment in the coming months. Also, we are really grateful for Spring Activator and me for bringing kind of very basic steps, but very fundamentals and critical for the funding. We are having another workshop on pitching in 3 days' time. So participants kindly be updated via your email address so that you will participate in it maybe same time, I think. Yeah, on the 31st of October. Okay. I don't know why you wait until the end to introduce. We have more introduction in the chat box, but yeah, we'll pass it to our speakers today later on by emails. And once again, thank you very much for your participation, your sharing, and we hope that we'll be connected by LinkedIn to Nguyen and Chami later on. Yeah. Once again, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Have a great
Thanks for having me.
afternoon. Thank you,
Okay.
Nguyen.
Bye-bye,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Min.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.